All right, let's move on to the Patriots. You remember when the Patriots used to be good?
Fuck off. Yeah, I knew you were gonna freaking asswipe.
Well, I mean,
they're gonna be good again.
They might be the second best team in this division,
fantastic.
dude. They might be the second best team in the division. Oh, come on.
They're gonna come in second at worst this year.
They look at worst.
At worst, they're coming in second.
You think they might win this? Do you think there's a chance they're going to win this division?
They almost beat the Bills in both times they played them last year. Cam Newton just fumbled it away like a moron. If I really have a very high opinion of Mack Jones, probably my delusional star boy Patriots fans' eyes gleaning over him. But I think he's the real deal. I think by the time he takes over, this offense could really take off.
All right. Well, I mean, they beat up on the Eagles' second string in preseason, so they do have that going for them.
They're good, man. They're good. They're going to be good. Wait till you see. This defense is great. The line is unbelievable. They're going to just pound out the clock and just bludgeon you. That's going to be their motto this year, and I think they're going to do it quite well.
Bludgeon you with Sony Michel. All right. Anyway, let's talk. I don't know what we can really say about the quarterbacks because you had them, at least when I did my research, right around an even split. And
it still is.
It's not really clear that anything has changed, what you're going to know. You had Newton going for like 147 out of 228, a little over 1,600 yards, 11 touchdowns, 6 picks, 87 rushes for 348 yards, 8 TDs. You had Mack, 188 out of 278. 21-25 in the air, 14 touchdowns, 7 picks. Obviously, this is like a clusterfuck, right? I just want to say your rushing numbers for Newton seem overly generous. I mean, 348 and 8 touchdowns? Really? I mean, I feel like he hasn't done anything on the ground in like 3 years.
Then you didn't pay attention to last year because
I didn't. I turned most of their games off halfway through the first quarter. Was he running all over the place?
Deservedly so. They weren't really worth your appointment viewing there. But he was third in terms of goal line attempts among every rusher, including running backs. I think he finished with like 12 or 15 rushing touchdowns in 12 games. He
had 15 rushing touchdowns?
Yeah, I think he had 12 to 15. I don't remember the exact amount off the top of my head. But
right. Yeah, if that's true, then I take back what I said. I had no idea. I would have guessed like 3.
And I think he had more rushing touchdowns than he had passing touchdowns last year too.
Well,
he was their goal line back.
That wouldn't be hard. I mean, how many running backs in the league had 15 touchdowns last year? How come people weren't talking about this? Like nobody, like one maybe, right?
Yeah, it might have been 12. It was somewhere between 12 and 15.
I mean, 12 is a lot.
But it was a lot. It was definitely a lot. And I think he will for however long he starts. The reports early right now are there's all but certain they're going to start Cam. I think that they'll probably ride that out. My guess is they face Tom Brady in week 6, right? I can't imagine, unless Mack Jones is already starting, they're going to chuck this guy to the Wolves and have him face Brady at his first start.
Real quick, Toons just came in with the save on stats. 12 rushing touchdowns, 8 passing touchdowns for Cam. Go ahead. Thanks.
There you go.
It's better than I thought.
Yes, exactly.
The passing was right around exactly what I thought.
Exactly. So these stats tell me about a half season of Newton, a half season of Mack Jones is kind of how I'm looking at it. Right. I would much rather it be very clear it's Mack Jones coming into the year. And, after this latest COVID scare with Cam going to be out for at least 5 days, maybe that's just going to give just enough of a window to Mack Jones, who I think has been super impressive throughout this entire preseason, the window to take over. Perhaps, maybe, I don't know. It certainly would help guys like Damian Harris to not have the goal line vulture of Cam, although they could very easily do a Taysom Hill type of thing where they bring Cam in and have him running it in at the goal line, even if Mack's starting. So to me, it's just one of those QB situations. We're spending a lot of words here on a situation that neither one of us know. We both know better. We're not going to draft either of these guys unless it's very, very deep best ball and you have only 2 quarterbacks. You want to take a stab on Newton having a few big weeks early. But yeah, I won't be touching these guys at all. I am interested in the running backs, which we're going to get to now, but I am going to have to adjust these guys for sure too.
All right. Change the banner to the Patriots. All right. So Damian Harris, this is a guy that we both kind of liked. I mean, I still like him. You had him for 234 rushes, 1076 on the ground, 7 touchdowns, a little bit of passing work, trailed by Sony Michel and James White. White obviously getting, a lot fewer carries, but you got him catching like 50 balls, scoring a couple there. You're a little bit more down on Harris.
Yeah, I'm going to be bumping him down just a little bit here. And that's because so far it's been a mixed bag for the preseason. in sense of I love the line. They are moving everybody, blowing everybody off the ball. And Damian Harris is the first man to the table, and all he's done is eat. He looks like he has more burst, more wiggle. He scored a goal line touchdown last week. He is everything you'd want to see from a back. The only thing that's concerning is he saw 8 snaps last week to 4 for Sony to 5 for James White. Nobody playing more than 50%. And I had thought with these projections I originally made that maybe he's going to really separate and take over and be like that lead early down guy with not much competition. But for what it's worth, Sony has actually looked pretty good. They've hyped him up in camp. And so I'm going to be bumping about 39% now of the rushing workload goes to Harris. And then I'm going to bump Sony up just a little bit. So that leaves us with 4%. So we'll bump, Sony up to 19 or so. And that might honestly be too generous because they often like to keep it really close, alternating series. And
we've seen it before, right?
Exactly.
I mean, the Patriots backfield is kind of an ongoing fantasy joke.
Really
we were sore. We kind of got our hopes up about Harris, but it seems like maybe it's just going to be more of the same.
Right, exactly. So I did when it comes out, that brings him from 1,007 to like 975 and 6. Not a huge downgrade, not an awful stat line by any means, but I had him, early round 6, 7, like at the latest running back. I'd feel better about him late 7, early 8 at this point. Bumped him below guys that could be true 3-down threats like Chase Edmonds, the San Fran guys, even though they're in a committee, a little more upside in my opinion. So I bumped him down a little bit in the rankings. And I think this little projection ding will probably have him falling right into that same alignment in that rankings. Yeah.
All right, let's talk receivers. Household names: Jacoby Myers. You got more to say? Go.
Could I pause you?
Sure.
I do want to mention. I guess it goes more so with receivers. James White's played every single of the third down snaps. He's seen 3 targets in both preseason games. It's looking like the same old James White, regardless of who is at QB. So I might be underselling his target share a little bit here, only 61 targets. I do want to bump him up. In fact, why don't we let that segue us? Why don't you talk about what I had for receivers? And I'm going to kind of adjust this a little bit as we move forward with this.
All right. And just to be clear, not to step on the James White thing, I have James White I got him in my auction. I got him really cheap, and I actually feel pretty good about it. I'm lacking running back depth. He's the type of guy I feel pretty confident is going to get me at least points if I have to put him in.
I think he's the ultimate late round, especially if you go 0 running back, that new popular strategy in PPR leagues. He's the ultimate. He falls to around 15. You're going to get probably 5 catches almost every single week. It's as good as a touchdown. Like, he is the steadiest round 14, 15 guy. I also do like McKissick and Bernard in that same type of vein, but I would have James White above all of those guys. He is still clearly involved with this team and in this offense.
All right, well, let's talk about the receivers you alluded to. Jakobi Myers, and I'm not really trying to hate on Jakobi Myers. I actually think he's a pretty good player, but
I'm going to be bumping him up here too.
But I'm not excited about him exactly. You had him for 56 catches, 700 yards, 3 touchdowns on 96 targets. You had Aguilar coming in 53 catches, 689 yards, 6 touchdowns on 81 targets. And there's not like a murderer's row of guys behind them either. But one thing that I think is interesting about your projections on this, and I doubt this will change even if some of your numbers do, we're not seeing a high catch percentage for either guy. And I mean, I assume that's both a reflection of them and the people throwing to them.
It's more so the people throwing to him. I was going to say that's one thing I'm going to change for Myers. It's clear he's going to be manning that slot role, which historically has been a 25% target rate, 75% catch rate because of how high percentage those looks are. It's very clear that's what they're going to have Myers doing. So I'm actually going to bump him up to, I think, 67. I think I switched him and Aguilar in the pecking order here. And I think Aguilar is more so that deep threat with that 58% or so catch rate. So I'm glad you caught that, Nat. And this seems a little bit more reasonable. I am, as I said, going to bump up Jimmy White to about a 15. I'll go 14% share here. I'm going to bump up Jacoby to 20. He's been operating as the clear number 1 throughout camp, every report. And then so far in the preseason, that's also played out where last week we saw it 3 of 3, 50 yards and a touchdown, looked great. He didn't score any touchdowns last year, but looked like a bull running it in this last week. So I'm going to bump his production up, bumping Jimmy up, and I'm going to have that at the expense of, I'll take 2% away from Kendrick Bourne, maybe 1% away from.
Hey, no.
Right. Yeah, exactly. These beasts. But I really think in terms of passing game weapons, Aguilar, Bourne might have a couple big days here and there, but the only steady value you're going to find here is Myers and James White in the passing game. I'm going to give I think there's a little more touchdown upside to what Myers showed last year. I mean, Scott Barrett, one of the best experts we have on every single year.
He's awesome.
He's so good. He called Myers his league winner. That was his league-winning wide receiver as a late-round guy. I was aligned with that. I've been landing Myers in round 13, 14 of every draft. He started to climb up the more and more he thrives in the preseason. But I still love him at his price where you can get him around 14, 15, assuming Callaway, Marshall, some of these higher big body guys are gone. I love Myers. PPR, I think he could be a steal this year.
All right, let's move on to tight ends. And this really fits nicely with pretty much everything else on the Patriots, which is just like, oh, everyone's nibbling everybody's cheese all the time. There's just this one block of cheese, and they're all scurrying up to it and taking bites, and no one's getting their own piece of cheese. Jonnu Smith, you had him at 48 for 576 and 5 touchdowns, closely followed by perennial disappointment, Hunter Henry. 45 catches, 495 for 5 touchdowns. Man, you remember how much we used to like Hunter Henry?
Yeah, he was such a beast as a rookie, and then continued every sophomore year. He missed some time, but he killed it in the games he played. It just never really came to fruition, unfortunately. Yeah. I do think he's still a plus athlete, big body, will definitely catch his touchdowns.
I mean, you have basically even numbers for these guys.
Exactly. I think Jonnu Smith, if I had to take one, it would be Jonnu. And I think I'm aligned with people, and there's a lot of smart people in the industry and friends as well that really think Jonnu's going to kill it in this offense. And he could. You hear those, now they've got Gronk Hernandez 2.0 comparisons lobbied out there. And when prime Tom Brady's not here, it certainly is not that situation. And neither of these guys are on the level of either of those two. So let's get
when those guys hear that comparison, they're both really quick to be like, I want to be Gronk.
Right. Yeah. And I think Jonnu is actually the more so than Hernandez, the better athlete, the guy they'll put in the slot. So good after the catch. I mean, Belichick, when they faced the Titans in the playoffs, was saying, this is the best run after the catch guy in the NFL, praising him. And then he goes out and gets him. So you know there's his brain is ticking. How do I want to use this guy? But I do think fantasy-wise, they're going to be great real life. I think our offense is going to be significantly more dangerous with these guys. But I still don't expect either of them to be viable week to week because, as you said, they're two mouses eating each other's cheese every single week. One day it might be Hunter Henry with 2 touchdowns. The next day it might be Jonnu Smith with 9 catches. But if one of them was going to be consistent week to week, I do think it would be Jonnu Smith in that higher probability, the yak type of role. I think he could be the more consistent of the guys. But as a whole, those are 2 tight ends I'm definitely avoiding in fantasy at their current prices.
Absolutely. Yeah, we spent a long time on the Patriots there, who, again, the Wolf says are going to be good.
Yeah, I think they're going to be great in real life. I really do think
great. What do you think? What do you think they're going to go?
I think they could win 10 to 11 games out of the 17 game slate. 11 and 6, I think is very, very reasonable. And that might still be second, but I think a wild card team, I think they make it back to the playoffs. And I think they're a team that nobody's going to really want to face because of this defense, because of the run game. They're the type of team that's built to upset better offenses in the playoffs. I'm a Patriots fan, of course, and I know I'm always an optimistic fantasy projector as well as fantasy fan of my home team. But I'm feeling really good about this run game, this defense, and when Mack Jones takes over, I think the kid's the real deal. I think we're set up well for the future. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.